Hello, this is Book a Day, and today I'm going to be talking about Life in the North, a apocalyptic lit RPG by Wong. This is a lit RPG, as was noted in the title. A lit RPG is a book based around an RPG engine, much of like what you'd see in a RPG tabletop or JRPG or RPG video game. The story starts off as we follow along with our main character, John Lee, a angry little Asian man. I would like to point out I am not trying to be intentionally racist. That is just his character. John had just gone through a breakup with a long-term relationship and decided to get away from it all, if you will. He wakes up in the morning to find himself in a situation where he is looking literally at a HUD or heads-up display. In a brief explanation, the HUD or heads-up display explains to him what had happened when the alien government tried to reach out to the population of Earth, aka alien means science experiment, and why their beloved planet is becoming a dungeon planet instead of being peacefully integrated. As John is groggily trying to determine whether or not the things he's looking at are part of a dream, he begins to stumble across the UI more and finds out that he is in a 110 plus level zone. John decided to get away from it all by going and camping out in the woods. To get away from it all, I believe it is quite understandable to spend some time in the woods, at least for a guy. As he begins to actually wake up and understand that he is in a very dangerous situation, he begins to wonder to himself, what is he looking at, and is there something to explain what he's looking at? This prompts the HUD to provide him with an additional perk due to the fact that he is in a very high level zone and being an extremely low level individual. The system provides him with his own assistant, if you will. We are then introduced to the spirit, Ali. Let me tell you something about Ali. No one is a bigger pain in John's ass than Ali. He loves to roast him and get him in as much trouble as possible without actually getting him killed. In the beginning of their relationship, there is quite a bit of friction between the two of them, but they do come to a bit of an understanding. The long and short, the reasons why Ali keeps getting him into trouble and jabbing at him is to prepare him for the trials of the system. After a bit of banter between the two of them, John finally begins to make his way back to civilization, or what is left of it. This is where we begin to realize that John has quite a bit of pent-up anger and rage. Being a Chinese Canadian, his father is always very hard on him growing up. An example of this is his father wanted him to grow up to become a doctor, but John is an IT guy. Now, this isn't to say that he isn't intelligent enough to become a doctor. He's just a stubborn asshole, which is probably why he got stuck with Ali. We go through some scenes where John is throwing himself into the fire, if you will. He starts doing this by attacking much higher leveled creatures that he later on comes to understand that they aren't just mindless creatures. They are actually sentient creatures who were trying to settle in the area. The biggest problem, though, was that they had overrun a town and killed everyone in it, which was the breaking point for John, seeing his own livelihood and civilization being turned into ashes. After spending quite literally days trying to take the town himself, he earns himself a city key that he turns into the shop. The shop is a system-created hub where you can go and purchase things to continue your journey in a dungeon world. One of the interesting things about the shop is, despite the amount of damage you may have taken before you have entered the shop, it is all removed and you are provided with a full health bar and all debuffs removed while you are in the shop, quite literally due to legal reasons of people making poor decisions when they are in the wrong state of mind or not all together after going through some major fights or serious damage to themselves. This is where we start to learn that the system is political as well as a natural force. From here, we start to build up John's hypothetical silhouette, if you will. He begins to use a sword, and he also gains a mecha suit that turns into a bike. I'm assuming this is somewhat reminiscent to Kamen Rider. For those of you who don't know, Kamen Rider is a bit of a Power Ranger or Super Sentai knockoff themed around motorcycles. After John gets himself some wheels, he now has a way to get to the city Whitehorse, where the majority of our storyline will be focused around. On his way there, we do come across a few colorful characters. Lana and Richard Pearson, a couple of siblings who had a group of huskies that they had raised, and after the system took over, turned them into pony-sized large attack dogs. Alongside them is Mikito Sato, an angry little Asian woman with a polearm. Once again, I'm not being racist, that's just the character. You're going to start to see a trend here. John shares some brief introductions with them and does help assist them in helping them safely return the refugees that they are leading back to Whitehorse. It is notable to mention that at some point he does come across his ex and her friends, who apparently had adapted to the system much easier than other people had, probably due to the fact that they're a bunch of nerds. This is where we begin to learn a bit more about John's character. He is in a situation where he can either confront his ex or run away, and he chooses to run away. After a bit of deep introspective monologue, he finds himself in Whitehorse, where he begins to learn that some of the aliens have taken over the town and are trying to integrate the former townspeople into the system. In a way. By this point, our boy John has earned himself a couple of titles, one of which being the Redeemer of the Dead, and has earned himself the ability to go and speak with the town lord, Roxas. Roxas is an interesting character, if a bit flamboyant, as we are given the list of his titles, which are many. Ali points out that one of the titles basically means aggressive cuddler of men. This actually brings up one of our two love interests, one being Lana, the other being Roxas. John finds himself in an interesting position of being the mitigator between the humans of Earth and the aliens, if you will, and that's only the start of his problems. Now, the System Apocalypse is a very rich and dense book of very interesting and colorful creatures and ideas, and packed filled with all kinds of politics. And it all usually boils down to John losing his shit and kicking someone's ass. That is more or less the core of what these books are. Watching our boy John losing his shit and killing as many things as possible, while Ali pokes and jabs and occasionally does help him with different situations. I personally found this series to be very entertaining, if not somewhat personal, as John does handle things in his own way, usually through a lot of aggression. I can easily say that each of these books has held my attention very, very well, and I immediately needed to go and get the next book as soon as it came out. I can honestly say that not a lot of books really grab my attention quite as well as these do. Now, personally, I have not found a perfect title yet, but I definitely want to give this a 9.5. This is an excellent start to a really good epic, if you will. While the book isn't fully a fantasy or a sci-fi, it sits nicely in the middle, adding on to the lit RPG side of things where you get to watch the character grow in level. There's a lot of explanation of how and why the system exists. Like a small example, why does John's phone no longer work, but very old cars do? The system doesn't use electricity. Well, it does kind of. but it uses mana to feed power to everything. But overall, I thoroughly did enjoy this series. Alright, this has been Book a Day, and I hope you have a good day. Thank you.